Deontay Wilder did a way better job on Dominic Breazeale than Anthony Joshua did. Do not think for 1 second that I'm not going to give credit where credit's due. Oh, I'm objective with it. Wilder and his team may talk a whole heap of rubbish on a regular basis, but God damn it, that boy can punch. He is country strong and his right hand is like a mule kick. If he hits anybody in the top 5 with the same punch he hit Breazeale with, they are going to be in serious trouble. Simple as that. If you don't understand that, then you don't understand nothing. Right? This guy's power has always been for real. Me and many other people noticed it long before he won a world title, that he had world level power, but some people were just slow on the uptake. But I'm going one step further at this point because I've seen enough evidence, collated enough data to now come out and tell you that Deontay Wilder is not only the hardest puncher in the heavyweight division right now, but Deontay Wilder is also a historically great puncher. Oh, yes, he is. And I'll get onto the criteria for being a historically great puncher later on in the video. But for now, I want to take you guys back to early on in Deontay Wilder's career, because a lot of people are saying I'm going too far by saying he's a historically great puncher. No. People were doubting that Deontay Wilder even had world-class punching power when he was on the way up, because they would say, well, who's he fought? He's knocking out a bunch of journeymen. How can you say he's got world-class punching power when he ain't beat nobody? How? Well, because I'm paying attention. That's how. Because I know what I'm looking at. Because I studied Deontay Wilder's punch mechanics from very early on. Deontay has always been a guy who gets tremendous torque on his punches, tremendous velocity on the right hand. He is like a heavyweight Tommy Hearns, the way he throws the right, the way he sets himself with a wide stance and then literally launches this javelin into your head. And in fact, Deontay Wilder is not a guy who punches at you. He punches through you with the right. That's what I'm talking about, punch mechanics. And I noticed this very early on when he was throwing the right hand. He was throwing it like Hearns, launching this thing at you. And the effect on the opponents was there for all to see. Sergey Likovich spasming on the canvas. Kelvin Price got hit with it. Boom, it was over. Big 6'7" guy, timber. The punch mechanic, even the sound of Deontay Wilder's right hand was different. Now, he didn't always manage to catch everybody with it as flush as he would have liked. And in them performances, some of his knockouts were a little more scrappy. But whenever he's caught somebody flush, like the way he caught Breazeale with it, particularly when he's fresh, they're in serious trouble. Unless they're catching a shot on their forehead or something or partially blocking it, they're going to be in serious trouble. Breazeale had his chin up in the air, got clocked, and down he went. Now, in fact, let me show you a couple of examples of what I'm talking about here. And I'm not saying I'm the only one. There were plenty of other people who noticed that Wilder had world-class punching power long before he fought anybody world-class. And it wasn't just through the observation. Part of it was through observation and what he was doing. Yes, he was fighting journeymen, but all the great punchers in heavyweight history have fought journeymen on the way up. So we can look at how they did against journeymen and how Wilder has done against journeymen and compare the effect of their punches like for like. That's what I was doing. I saw Mike Tyson coming up fighting journeymen, and these journeymen were going flying for Mike Tyson's shots. Same thing with Deontay Wilder. Yeah? Same thing with George Foreman. Same thing with Ernie Shavers. So I know what it looks like when you've got one of these historically great punchers on the way up through the ranks. Now, I didn't know early on in his career that he would become a historically great puncher, and that's what I'm saying he is now. I knew he was a world-class puncher, but I needed to see a bit more before I was ready to take that step and say, okay, this is a historically great puncher. Now, do not get it twisted. I'm not saying Deontay Wilder is a historically great fighter, not just yet. That remains to be seen. To be a historically great fighter, you're going to need more than just a historically great punch. Okay? But in terms of his punching power alone, it's right up there with the best I've seen. Now, let me play you some examples of, in fact, before I go into that, there were also testimonials from people like Jamil McCline, who was Lennox Lewis's sparring partner for many years, who fought Vladimir Klitschko and many others. Jamil McCline said that Deontay Wilder was the hardest puncher he'd ever been in a ring with. And this is a guy who had been in with Vladimir Klitschko in a real fight, not with 16-ounce or 18-ounce gloves on, because he only sparred Wilder. But he said in all his years, he never got hit so hard as Wilder hit him. Then you had Murat Gassiev, who was just a young pro at the time, coming out saying, if you remember, I did a video about it. I was talking about it in this video, coming out saying that Wilder hit harder than Klitschko. And you had a bunch of backlash to what Gassiev said. When I mentioned it in this video, oh, there's no way he hits harder than Klitschko. What are you talking about? How can anybody say that? Well, Gassiev can say that because he's been in the ring with both of them. That's how he can say that. Then, of course, you had David Haye, who had Wilder in when Wilder was a young pro to help him in preparations for a couple different fights. And David Haye said Wilder hit harder with 18-ounce gloves on than Klitschko did with 10-ounce gloves on. When you have all of these different testimonials converging with what you're seeing with your own eyes, if you know what you're looking at and you're paying attention, the punch mechanics, the sound of the shots when he's hitting you, the effect the shots are having on the opponents, flying all over the canvas. I've seen plenty of historically great punchers fight journeymen. And I can compare what happens to them like for like, similar level opposition, what happens when they hit people to what happens when Wilder was hitting people. And it's very similar. And I do want to draw a distinction between somebody who is a genuinely tremendous puncher and somebody who's just a prolific puncher, because they're not always one and the same. Sometimes you get guys who have tremendous one-punch knockout power, but their delivery system is not world-class or not elite. So they've got tremendous power. They can hit harder than anybody in the world, but they don't have the skill to be able to land with that tremendous punch once they reach elite competition. So when they're in elite competition, you might see their knockout percentage drop because they're just not landing their big shot. But then you get other guys who are not necessarily big one-punch knockout artists, but they're very consistent. They have a great delivery system. A good example would be Vitaly Klitschko. Vitaly Klitschko was not a big one-punch knockout man, but he had a very high KO ratio because he was very consistent. He had a great delivery system and he could wear you down with his punches. Vladimir, his brother, actually hit much harder than Vitaly, but Vladimir had a lower KO ratio. Okay, because he wasn't quite as aggressive for most of his career and didn't go for the KO and didn't consistently hit the opponent the way Vitaly did. So there is a difference between being a prolific puncher and being a genuinely devastating puncher. Sometimes you get fighters who are both, but sometimes you get fighters who are one or the other. Okay? Anyway, let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about. When Wilder was on the way up and people were questioning his power. I never questioned the power, bro. I know what I'm looking at. First of all, let's find the earliest one here. Which one is it? Is it a Kelvin Price from 2012? Is it a Lajkovic from 2013? Let's listen to Kelvin Price from 2012. What did I say about Wilder's power here?
Wilder's right hand is the truth. It's genuine. There's nothing fake. There's nothing phony about that right hand. If it lands on pretty much anyone's chin, it's good night.
There you heard it for yourselves what I said back in 2012 about Wilder's right hand. Where was Wilder in 2012? What was he doing? Fought Damon McCreary, Kirsten Manswell, Kelvin Price. So this is long before he fought for the world title, several years later. And I was telling you that if he hits anybody with a right hand, it's over. They're in serious trouble. Okay? Then, after I talked about it for that fight, I think it was the Lajkovic fight. What did I say about it in the Lajkovic fight?
And from the footage that we've all seen, Wilder can seriously bang. You know, pretty much anyone he cracks with that right hand is going to have serious problems.
Same thing again. And this is back in 2013, long before he won a world title. I'm telling you, this guy, I know what I'm looking at. This guy's got world-class punching power. Then, where are we at? The Stavern fight. What did I say about his power in the Stavern fight? Let's listen. And he can punch. Anyone who doubts Deontay Wilder's punching power, ask Bermain Stavern. Right, Berman Stavern, however you want to pronounce that first name. I'm sure Stavern will tell you that Wilder's a serious puncher. I'm sure that Stavern will tell you he's never been shaken up the way he was shaken up by Wilder. Even though he didn't go down, Stavern's got a good chin, but you saw that fight for yourself. He was hurt several times in there. In fact, Stavern actually did go down in the fight. I think it was in the second or third round, but it wasn't called a knockdown. He went down in the fight. And in fact, Stavern was never the same after being hit that hard in that fight, in my view. Okay, so I'm certainly not the only one who recognized that Wilder had world-class punching power before he'd fought anybody world-class. But for those of us who were in that group who could see it, we're not geniuses. We were just paying attention. That's all. All you have to do is pay attention and know what you're looking at. And you would have known before he fought anybody world-class that his power was going to translate to world-class. Yeah? The guy's right hand doesn't sound like a normal right hand. The way he turns into it, the velocity on it, the body mechanics. This guy's got his shoulder and all sorts and he's punching through the target with it. AJ don't punch through the target like that. Yeah, most of the top guys do not punch through the target to the extent that Wilder does. They might punch through the target a little bit. Wilder launches that right hand through the target. Like a flipping javelin. Now, let's get on to my assertion that Deontay Wilder is now a historically great puncher. He's right up there with the best punchers I've ever seen. Some people say, well, once again, these people who are too short-sighted and slow in the uptake, how can you say he's a historically great puncher? He needs to beat everybody in the top 10 before you can say that, or everybody in the top 5. What a load of rubbish. We're not saying he's a historically great fighter. That's a different thing. We're talking about his punching power. We're not talking about his overall game and overall effectiveness as a fighter. He might not be a historically great heavyweight champion. I've never said that he would be. Yeah, that remains to be seen. We need to find out who he can beat and who he can't beat. But in terms of just his punching power, this guy's right up there with the best. I'm telling you. And to give you some examples here. Some of you may know Julian Jackson is widely regarded as one of the greatest punchers in boxing history. He was a middleweight champion, made multiple defenses, but Julian Jackson never knocked out anybody who was elite other than Terry Norris. That's it. You look at Julian Jackson's record, and if you lived through his career as I did, you already know this. And what's more, Terry Norris was always chinny. So Julian Jackson, this guy who is revered as one of the greatest middleweight punchers of all time, only had one elite win, and that was over a chinny Terry Norris. Terry Norris is a great fighter, but everybody knows Terry Norris was chinny. Yeah? And that's Julian Jackson's best career win, Terry Norris. But yet he still goes down as a historically great puncher. Why? Because people were comparing Jackson's performance against these mediocre fighters. And to be fair, Harold Graham is one of the best British, if not the best British fighter to never win a world title. So, Harold Graham was of a standard, but Harold Graham never had great punch resistance either. All right. But the point I was making is people were comparing the effect of Julian Jackson's punches on the mediocre opposition he was fighting to his contemporaries, his rivals. They were looking at when they fought similar level opponents to these, what kind of effect their punches had on that level opposition. And they concluded through using their own eyes and paying attention that actually Jackson's punches appeared to be more devastating on a similar level of opposition. Hence why this guy's gone down as one of the greatest punchers ever. Deservedly so. You can look at the punch mechanics of Julian Jackson's shots. Then we move on to Ernie Shavers. Ernie Shavers was widely regarded as the hardest punching heavyweight, or one of the hardest punching heavyweights, in boxing history for decades. Ernie Shavers' best career win was over Ken Norton. Ken Norton was already over the hill. And that was Ernie Shaver's best career win. Ernie Shavers lost most of his big fights. He obviously lost to Muhammad Ali. He lost to Larry Holmes a couple times. He lost to Ron Lyle. He lost to Ron Stander. He lost to who was the guy that knocked him out in the first round? What's his name? The Irish American guy. I'm forgetting his flipping name. Jerry Quarry. Jerry Quarry knocked him out in the first round. Ernie Shavers lost most of his big fights. Facts. If you don't know, well, I'm telling you now. All right? Lost most of his big fights. But yet he still went down as one of the greatest heavyweight punchers in history. Because once again, people were looking at him, the wins that he had over relatively mediocre opposition, other than, fading Norton, and he did manage to beat Jimmy Young. They were looking at his wins over the relatively mediocre opposition, and they were seeing the effect his punches had on those guys and comparing it to the effect that his contemporaries' punches were having on similar level opponents. And there were also the testimonials from Muhammad Ali, from Ken Norton, from various other fighters, from Larry Holmes. Testimonials from those guys where they were like, this guy's power is crazy. Now, of course, Ernie Shavers did hurt and drop some of the top fighters. Even if he didn't beat them, he managed to hurt some of them and drop some of them. And that, of course, contributed to his reputation as one of the greatest punchers of all time. But the same goes for Deontay Wilder. Didn't he hurt and drop Tyson Fury, who's one of the top guys right now? Yes, he did. So if the likes of Ernie Shavers, who wasn't a great fighter, great puncher, yes, not a great fighter. If the likes of Ernie Shavers and Julian Jackson can go down as some of the greatest punchers in history, I see no reason why Deontay Wilder can't do the same. How many defenses has Deontay Wilder made now? Like 8 defenses? He's got this crazy knockout ratio. Been in there with Fury now, been in there with Ortiz, knocked Ortiz out. You look at Julian Jackson's record, people. Yeah, that win over Terry Norris, and Terry Norris was chinny anyway. But other than that, when he fought the elite guys, he got smoked. Most of his spectacular KO wins are against mediocre opposition. Same way for Wilder, all right? So if Jackson can be called one of the greatest punchers, a historically great puncher, there's no reason why Wilder can't. I'm telling you now. Know your boxing history, people, all right? And same way with Deontay Wilder. I'm telling you now, he will be remembered in years to come in the same breath as the Julian Jacksons and the Ernie Shavers in terms of punching power, being a historically great puncher. He may not go down as a historically great fighter. I would argue Julian Jackson was not a historically great fighter. Yeah, he got smoked by the body snatcher, Mike McCallum. He got smoked by Gerald McClellan. They were the real elite guys, other than Terry Norris, who he fought. And the elite guys smoked him. He never knocked them out. So I would say he wasn't a historically great fighter, but a puncher? Serious. Serious. I hear some people say that Deontay Wilder needs to knock out like most of the top 5 to prove that he's a historically great puncher. Never heard such a load of rubbish in my life. Because once again, there's a difference between being a historically great puncher and being a historically great fighter. But we already know, if you're paying attention, that if he lands the same right hand he landed on Brazil, on any guy in the top 5, they're going down. At the very least, they're going to be in serious trouble. At the very least. How do we know that? Well, Anthony Joshua was in all sorts of trouble from a Dillian Whyte left hook when Dillian Whyte was backing up. Anthony Joshua was also rocked by Povetkin. Anthony Joshua was down against Vladimir Klitschko. Now, all these guys can punch, but look at the circumstances. And in fact, look at Anthony Joshua's amateur record, dropped by Dillian Whyte in the amateurs. Stopped by that southpaw guy, what's he called, Nista? You're trying to tell me that you need more evidence that Deontay Wilder can hurt Anthony Joshua? What, are you simple? Of course he's going to hurt Anthony Joshua if he cracks him with that right hand. Joshua's going to be on the canvas. If he lands as clean as he landed on Brazil on AJ's chin, AJ's going down. Now, I'm not saying he's going to land. That remains to be seen. Maybe AJ will get to him first. But the power is for real. Don't doubt the power. As far as Tyson Fury, well, we've already seen him drop Fury, and he dropped Fury in the 12th. Wilder's power ain't the same in the 12th when he's knackered, because he was knackered in that 12th. His power weren't the same in the 12th as it was in the first. But yet he still dropped the guy. Dylan White. White was obviously knocked out by AJ. He was seriously shaken up by Robert Helenius. He was knocked down by Joseph Parker. Well, you're trying to tell me that if Wilder lands on him, the same right hand he hit Brazil with, that Dylan White's just going to walk through it? What brand of crack are you smoking? We already know what's going to happen. Dylan White's going to be doing the stanky leg. Or he's going to be looking up at the stars. That's what's going to happen. And then we get to Luis Ortiz. Well, we already know what happened there because they already fought Luis Ortiz. So we don't need to see Wilder knock all these guys out to know that he's a tremendous puncher and to know that he's a historically great puncher. We don't need that. We don't need to see that because we already know he can do it. If you got any sense in your head, apparently some people don't. And hey, if you don't like that top five, there are other top fives. You can go ahead and do the same thing. Yeah. You know, someone tried to tell me that if Deontay Wilder's such a big puncher, how come he couldn't knock Johan Duopa out clean the way Povetkin did? And once again, you're dealing with people who are not paying close enough attention or simply have no idea what it is they're looking at. When Duopa fought Povetkin, Duopa wasn't even supposed to be in the ring. He was coming off a long layoff. He hadn't trained a day. He was actually in Russia as a fan. He was there to watch Povetkin versus Stavern. But when Povetkin tested positive again, and God knows what he was on in this fight because he looked way more muscular against Johan Duopa than he looked subsequently. So God knows what he was juiced up on. Just look at the muscularity, the muscle definition in his body in this fight. So Duopa hadn't trained, wasn't ready for a 12-round battle, didn't have any kind of strategy, didn't even have his boxing boots with him. That's how underprepared he was. Look, he's got his Asics trainers on. Against Deontay Wilder, he had a training camp. He had a strategy. He had been sparring. He was ready to fight. Against Povetkin, he clearly wasn't. And furthermore, against Deontay Wilder, look where Johan Duopa's chin is. Super glued to his chest. That's why he ended up with all this damage around his nose, the cheeks, the forehead. That's where most of the damage was. Because that's where he was taking the right hands. Much better to take them there than to be taking them there. Against Povetkin, he was caught with his chin in the air. And if you don't know that getting caught on your forehead is a lot better than getting caught on your chin, then you don't know nothing about boxing. I remember the late Costamado talking about how certain fighters give the illusion of having an iron jaw because they always keep their chin tucked down. So nobody ever gets a real crack at their chin when it's up in the air. But the first time somebody does get a crack, sometimes these guys end up going down and it causes a big shock. Oh my God, this guy's supposed to have an iron jaw. Well, maybe nobody had really caught him on the jaw properly before because he was protecting it so well for most of his career. And this is an example of that. Johan Duopa, totally underprepared, not fit to fight, didn't have, a strategy worked out, hadn't done all the sparring that you need to do to get yourself ready for this level of opposition, turned up in his trainers, less than a week's notice, with a guy who's pumped up on God knows what, and gets caught with his chin in the air like this. This is the knockout blow. Look at Povetkin's feet, by the way, off the floor. People used to criticize Wilder, make fun of Wilder for throwing punches with his feet off the floor. Plenty of fighters throw punches with their feet off the floor. Povetkin, same way here. His chin's in the air. You get caught with your chin in the air like that, it's going to be different than when your chin is down. So this is one of the reasons that Duopa was able to take Wilder's shots longer than he was able to take Povetkin shots because he was in better condition against Wilder, better prepared, had his chin down, wasn't getting caught with his chin in the air. So was able to go long before he eventually got stopped. Simple. All right. So now that we've debunked that silly comparison, you can move on. And there's also a myth. I was debating with somebody in my Facebook group. There's also this myth that in order to prove yourself this tremendous puncher, you have to beat the top 5 guys by KO because their chins are going to be better than the people ranked below them. No, they're not. Where on earth did you get that ridiculous notion from? Let me show you who has the best chin in the heavyweight division. You want me to show you? Let's have a look. It's nobody in the top 5. Oh no, there's nobody there that has the best chin in the division. We need to go further down. Oh, we need to go further down still. Where are we at? No, further down still. Further down. Where are we at? There he is, number 50. That's the guy who has the best chin in the heavyweight division. The guy's at number 50. Well, you doubt that? Well, haven't you seen Mariusz Wach versus Vladimir Klitschko? I have never seen in Vladimir Klitschko's entire career somebody who took so many flush right hands and left hooks from Vladimir Klitschko and stayed on their feet. I've never seen it. Samuel Peter didn't even take as many flush shots. Vladimir wasn't even letting go with full power on Sam Peter in the first fight as much as he was against Mariusz Wach. It blew my mind how good this guy's chin was. I remember David Hay had Mariusz Wach in for sparring and he said that he felt like he needed a baseball bat to hurt Mariusz Wach. He couldn't believe how durable this guy was when he was cracking him. And Wach is not fast. You know, he's easy to hit and he's got a massive jaw, but it's made of iron. And he's not elite. He never has been. He's always been a fringe contender, Mariusz Wach. You know, I guess a contender when the Klitschko era was in full swing and talent was very thin on the ground, you might have called him a contender, but for the majority of his career, a fringe contender. Nowhere near elite. But yet his chin is better than all these guys. Huh? If you look back through boxing history, Vladimir Klitschko was never known for having one of the better chins in the top 10. But yet he reigned for years. Lennox Lewis was never known for having one of the best chins in the top 10, but yet he reigned for years. I mean, if you look at historically in the heavyweight division, the guys who had the best chins, I mean, you can go back to the 60s with George Chuvalo. George Chuvalo wasn't elite, but he had a better chin than just about anybody else. In the 80s, you had Randall Tex Cobb. He wasn't elite, but he had a better chin than just about anybody else. Later on, you had Oliver McCall. Now, McCall had the one win against Lennox Lewis, but for the rest of McCall's career before and after, he was a fringe contender and at many stages just regarded as a journeyman. But yet he had a tremendous chin, right? So do not think that just because people are ranked higher, they're going to have better punch resistance. It doesn't work like that. What you generally find is that the guys at the upper echelons, let's say the top 5, are better at avoiding taking the big shots. That's what you find. But they don't generally have, better punch resistance than the guys in, 6 to 10 or 6 to 15. They generally don't have any better punch resistance than them. They may have better skills. They may have better power. They may have better defense. But in terms of punch resistance, you don't usually find any more special guys in terms of punch resistance in the top 5 than you do in the top 10 or top 15. If you don't know that, you don't know nothing, right? Historically, that's the case. And in fact, there have been many fighters in the lower weight divisions who couldn't really take a punch, but were elite fighters. I already mentioned Terry Norris. Or anybody heard of Tommy Hearns? Tommy Hearns was chinny, but Tommy Hearns was an all-time great puncher too. But he was chinny. The great Roy Jones was chinny all along, but we never found out until he fought Tarver because he was so good at avoiding being hit with anything serious that we never knew that all along this guy couldn't take a shot. There had been rumors that had come out of gyms and stuff like that had been starched in sparring here and there, but we never heard, or I never heard who it was that starched him. I just heard random rumors coming out of gyms that he'd been starched. But we never found out for sure that Roy Jones really didn't have much of a chin until Antonio Tarver in the rematch and that big left hand. That's when we realized, wow, this guy was so talented that he avoided getting hit with a shot like that his entire career up until he was like 36, 37. He even went to heavyweight and fought John Ruiz and never got caught with anything that serious. So again, the elite guys tend to be the guys who are not taking as many punches, as many serious, clean, flush on the jaw punches as the guys further up the ladder. Yeah? Of course, you do get some elite guys who take a lot of shots and are proven to have an iron jaw. You do get that sometimes. But generally speaking, the guys in the top 5 don't tend to have better punch resistance than the guys from 6 to 15. You know? That's how it goes. If you don't know that, you don't know nothing. There are very few people in the heavyweight division who Deontay Wilder is not going to be able to seriously hurt with that right hand. Very few people. I mean, just look at AJ and who's hurt him. As I said before, Dylan White hurt him. Povetkin hurt him. If I didn't mention that before, Povetkin had him wobbly. Dropped by Vladimir. Tyson Fury was dropped by Nevin Pikage and Steve Cunningham, and he's already been dropped by Wilder a couple of times. Dylan White was knocked out by AJ, hurt by Hellenius, dropped by Joseph Parker. Luis Ortiz already knocked out by Wilder. Povetkin himself was knocked out by, was dropped by Vladimir Klitschko and David Price, and also stopped by Anthony Joshua. And we can compare what Deontay Wilder's best shots did against Dominic Breazeale to what Anthony Joshua's best shots against Dominic Breazeale did. We can compare the effect. And clearly, unless you need some strong spectacles, you can see that Wilder's shots had more effect. Yeah? Dominic Breazeale was hurt in the second round against AJ. Dominic Breazeale's face. Look at his face. Huh? Look at this guy's face. This is in the 6th round. You can go back to the 2nd round and see Dominic Breazeale's eye all swollen up from an Anthony Joshua left hook, getting tattooed with all kind of punches. But he was taking the shots, even though his chin was in the air, he was getting caught with all kind of silly punches. He was taking the shots better than he took Wilder's right hand. Because AJ is a good puncher. Don't get it twisted. AJ's definitely got more than enough power to hurt most heavyweights out there. If he hits Deontay Wilder with his big right hand or his left hook, hey, Wilder's going to be seeing stars. So this is not a video where I'm going to claim that Deontay Wilder's all of a sudden the best heavyweight out there. That's not what this video is about. It's a video for those of us, not just me, those of us who understand what we're looking at with Deontay Wilder's punching power is not your regular heavyweight big puncher. This is something different. This is something historical. Yeah, this guy is going to be talked about up there with the Ernie Shavers and the Julian Jacksons in years to come. I'm telling you now, some people are slow in the uptake. It's going to take some people to come around, Wild to come around and realize it. But that's what we're dealing with. And hopefully this performance by Deontay Wilder against Dominic Breazeale, because he did such a better job against Breazeale than AJ did, it may give his team and even him more confidence and more impetus to make that undisputed fight. Because I do believe that their confidence was kind of knocked after the Tyson Fury fight. And that his team were a little anxious about putting him in with AJ coming off that Fury performance. But after seeing what he did to Breazeale, a common opponent of Anthony Joshua, hopefully they're going to be more confident and there's going to be more impetus to give us the fight that we all want to see. And I've said all along, I don't know who wins that fight. You guys hear me sitting here and telling you week in, week out that Deontay Wilder's talking rubbish, his team are talking rubbish. Yeah, they do talk rubbish. But that don't mean that right hand ain't like a mule kick, because it is. That don't mean that I don't think he can fight. I've always said I rate Deontay Wilder as a fighter. Rate him highly. This man is dangerous. Is he limited? Of course he is. Of course he's limited. He may not go on to be a great fighter in general, and have the resume that can match a Lennox Lewis or an Evander Holyfield or an Ali. He may not go down to have anything like that. But in terms of his punching power, don't question it. If you know what you're looking at, if you know what you're talking about, if you're paying attention, that power's sick. It's crazy. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.